Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split in two and figuring out just what is going on is a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we're reading The South by Tash Aw, up to but not including the chapter beginning with "There is not enough space on the bed for the two of them to lie down on their backs," page 142 in the hardcover and ebook, and also up to but not including chapter 19 in the audiobook.
Oh, the audiobook has chapters.
It does. It's much more. Well, I guess they couldn't just leave it all blank titles.
Fair.
So they do. I did try to line it up. Like I looked back and forth between the text throughout reading it, and yeah, it is technically the accurate chapter number. They just never bothered to throw chapter numbers on top.
Mm-hmm.
So this book is, I think, a bit different than some of the ones we've been doing recently. We talk a lot about, some of our books are more plot focused, more character focused, and I think we knew ahead of time this would be a bit more character focused. I think it's proving to be the case so far.
It's kind of like, this is going to sound really weird, but like it takes place in the summer and it kind of feels like the summer, right? There's kind of like a hazy, like dreamy atmosphere to it.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and I do think it's trying to be like reflective. I don't know if we'll get like the big points of reflection. Maybe we'll save them for the second half, but there is like some interesting things happening with structure here with like the first person chapters, which are from Jay's POV, which I'm assuming are more reflective, and then we have third person POV chapters, which happen with some of the J chapters. I think when he wants to create like a separation, or maybe like tell that moment as a story more so than like him looking back on it, I think that's when he chooses to maybe do third person. And then third person also happens with like the Sui and Fong chapters, which makes sense if he's like telling their story.
I guess if the perspective is supposed to be Jay delivering the story, whether or not it's writing the book, I guess, but like just delivering the story, then that makes some sense. The third person around chapters that have Jay in it is a bit interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think we've gotten 2 so far.
Yeah, I don't even think I caught that, but that's a good observation.
Yeah, I think it's the first one, which was a really intense chapter, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then when they're swimming in the lake together.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting because there's kind of a parallel between those scenes, too, as far as, like, yeah, their content, what they're about when it comes to Jay and Chuan, and maybe talking about them third person kind of, I don't know, makes them a bit of an item in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is also, I think, maybe the only story we've had that has taken place in Asia, question mark? I think that's
no.
a first. No?
I mean, Lonely Castle in the Mirror was a Japanese book.
Oh, true. I forget that story also takes place in the real world.
Yeah.
That's not just the like mystical other side. Yeah. No, good point. But yeah, this one specifically, we couldn't tell this from the book description, takes place in Malaysia. And I think it's important to note there's like an aspect of Chinese diaspora here. And I think both of these families that were kind of centered around are ethnically Chinese that have moved there, and they talk about like speaking Cantonese and the names and things like that. So that kind of seems to come up throughout this. And then the other kind of setting aspect being that it's the late 90s, which I think kind of took a while to figure out exactly where they were.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, like there's a cell phone reference that certainly made me think it was more modern than that. Not that this is like deeply old, at least in my perspective, But yeah, I think that the sort of setting of it was, I don't know, maybe a little surprising, but interesting. I think there's something inherent about a story that's like, it's about going out to the farm that makes it feel older, but it's not.
Yeah. I was fully ready to believe this is like, maybe not modern times because of like the lack of internet maybe. And like, obviously there's big feelings of isolation from a lot of these characters. So I wasn't expecting like now present time, but I was not expecting the 90s, I'll say.
Yeah. It's led to some fun features, especially I think with like the sisters, and Lena in particular, of like I think there's a feature of the relationships, or like the core family, especially like I guess like Jay's family, where part of the story is a family coming into modern time. And like they talk about like Lena getting the sides of her head shaved, and like I don't know, just like even like I think when Yin went off to college, like kind of having a moment of rebellion or like just trying to become her own. Like it feels modern in that way, and like they're pushing boundaries in ways that are relatable now.
Yeah, I guess it is interesting that like some of these things, yeah, are never gonna change. You would still have fathers that are like Jack, who are kind of assholes. I guess only now it would be maybe easier to rebel, easier to form communities outside of your family.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, these kind of stories, yeah, don't really change too much, do they?
Yeah.
Speaking of Jack, we can talk about Jack. I feel like in a character book, it's always dangerous to just like outward, like just completely hate a character. Usually they have a little bit more nuance than that, but
Yeah.
I think so far Jack is the most annoying man to ever exist.
He's difficult, right? Like I think that's his thing. He's like actively a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Clearly he has like very strict rules of how things should be. He seems to be a perfectionist.
Yeah.
He only seems to care about really his own problems.
There was like I don't know if I wrote it down, but there was a good quote that I think came from the mom's perspective that was like he has so much sensitivity for himself that there's nothing left for anyone else.
Mm,
Like he's so like, and I think it was like in the whole thing of he's able to identify his own ailments like before the doctor does. Like he's just like so like yeah, like inwardly facing and like checking in with his own position, status, I don't know, like just he's just checking in with himself so much more that's like that is so it supersedes so much what anyone else would think that it kind of gives him a self-righteousness for the way that he goes through life.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I think the way for one thing, I always bring up whenever we have a teacher character, like this character is a teacher, and I'm like, come on, where's like that can't be nice for the students then if he's this way, right? Like he's kind of an older school vibe if that's the case, if he's kind of the strict, by the book rule following type. So that I can't, and I understand it's higher ed too, but that seems like it might be an unpleasant experience for his students. But I think he definitely brings that home with Jay, like because he sees Jay as kind of lazy, right? And he's like, you got to get out on the farm, you got to do some work, and like it doesn't help that Jay is not exactly an excellent student either. Like he's not exactly he's not giving his dad anything to latch onto as like, oh, Jay will be okay because of this, but he does really put like an extra amount of pressure on Jay. At least in the current moment, right? Like we don't really know what the past has looked like for Yin and Lena, and they're not really kids anymore. So like, who knows what that was like for them? But like in the current moment, Jay is getting a lot of that pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say for the teaching part, because Suri was his student, we do get some info in regards to what he was like as a teacher. And like to your point, it does seem like every single student hated his guts.
Totally.
He was not a good teacher. Nobody took him seriously.
And he's totally playing favorites, right? Like, I mean, that's how this happens with Sui, where he's like this student is special kind of vibes,
Yeah.
Not to mention they do end up in a relationship together, so obviously it's weird. And like at least they're all adults, right? But it's not good. The power dynamic,
I mean, adults is a stretch.
Yeah.
For somebody whose like brain isn't fully developed, I'll say.
Well, yeah, and it was what, a 15-year age gap. Like she's probably like 18 years old when they meet each other, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly if they mention it, but I think she was finishing technical school.
Okay, so we can give it a couple years. Maybe she was 21.
Yeah. Still
and he was
crazy.
36. It's just, yeah, that's just so nuts to me. Yeah, like I talk about this sometimes of like when I was an undergrad, I was definitely like like talking to grad students like in romantic ways, and I just think about once I hit grad student age how I was like, that's so crazy that those people were doing that, right? Like it's just like, there's certain lines you cross where it's like, sure, like maybe the number of years doesn't feel crazy, right, if they're like 4 years older than me. But like the hindsight of it is like that is such a major life change that I can't imagine being in that position and being like, yeah, I'm like the same as this undergrad.
Right. There is a note mentioned that she was pregnant before her wedding. So It seemed like our hand has kind of been forced situation.
I didn't even think of it that way. As in, like, they're getting married because they fucked up and got pregnant.
Maybe at least on her end, he might actually just want to get married because he's so much older and he hasn't found anyone else.
True.
Maybe kind of following his father's footsteps, where he's just like, this one will do, and then just kind of going for it. But for her, at least, if she's from like a poorer background, possibly won't get a job, and now also pregnant, it's kind of like, maybe I should marry the teacher. And she might even still like him at this point. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, just a quicker decision than it might have been otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't set them off on the right foot for the long-term success.
Right, because clearly their relationship falls apart if it was ever really together. Question
Hard
mark.
to tell. Yeah, there's definitely not great vibes here, and like the kids pointed out too, right? Like the sisters are like talking about them getting divorced and stuff. It's not looking like it's actively loving, right? Even if they could still be committed to it, but they're just not in the zone of marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, Sui is giving unhappy vibes. She's of the characters. I think of all the characters, she's kind of the most down to earth one. Like she tends to be a bit more sympathetic and, I don't know, responds holistically to things that she's confronted with. Like if someone's complaining about something, like she's not just gonna agree with someone. She's not gonna just take the strict route, even though I do think she is on the strict side still. But I think she's in touch with emotion and feeling in a way that some of the other characters are. So that I think that shines for her. But it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't change or misrepresent the fact that she's unhappy at her core. And we get some background that she like wanted to be an artist, but just like I think this happens all the time. She was an excellent student, and so she was told to go do more technical work, and ended up like in these kind of STEMmy classes with Jack. So she didn't really get to pursue what she wanted, and maybe had the sense that would have been difficult to do anyway. And then she's also got like this kind of deep-seated unsatisfaction from childhood of like having grown up the child of immigrants. We see her kind of struggle with, having to be the sort of cultural intermediate between her parents and the society that they live in. And she like kind of grows to resent the idea of that and like having to be in that role, and just kind of wishes everyone had assimilated when she was a child. So she's got kind of a lot of unresolved inner tensions about her life.
Mm-hmm. You said a lot of things without pause. So
Sorry.
I'm going to try and cover it all.
Yeah, go for it.
She is definitely more empathetic, I guess. But I do think there's a very clear sense of like traditional family values here, because towards like the end, when Jay and Chuan are going to go out and get dinner, there's like this weird tension that happens. Fong is clearly against it, and it seems like Sui has something to say about it, but she holds back, almost as if she's waiting for like Jack's opinion or like Jack's response. So I think maybe, at least in regards to her children, she still might like defer to him to take like the leading role.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, one of the kids says towards the beginning, like they're shocked they're going to the farm because it was their mom's idea and she's not usually the one making decisions.
Yeah. So I think unhappy for sure. I think she's probably had a long history of holding her tongue.
Yeah.
And yeah, probably because she did want to be an artist. And she herself notes like she wanted to be an artist, but like, how do you become an artist, right? Like
she's like, how will I ever make money doing this, right? I think was her concern,
which I think is completely fair when it comes to creative fields like that. I feel like the internet has made certain things easier, but like, yeah, it's like, how do you become an artist? How do you show off your art? How do you get a place in a gallery? Like all of these weird things that people don't really think about. And especially because of her upbringing, she would have absolutely no idea.
Right.
So yeah, she took the more practical approach, which was to go to a technical school. So I think her marriage is very similar. She's being very practical within her marriage.
Totally.
But yeah, that just breeds unhappiness eventually. And then maybe you said other things, but I feel like those are my main points. I don't know.
For sure. Yeah, I think the only other thing was like the growing up a child of immigrants kind of.
Right. Which I think is a interesting story in its own right.
Yeah.
I took a like Latin literature class in college, and I think at least one of them, I don't remember all the books I read, but like that is an experience people have of like their parents being immigrants, but they've been raised within like America, for example, and they've kind of acclimated to that situation, and they have to kind of help their parents with certain things, and that can breed resentment.
Totally.
Because it's like, why aren't you fitting in? Like, why can't you speak English? And like all of these things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. For sure, you're right. It's almost like there's a whole story hidden in that. But yeah, I think it is maybe because it is kind of a more common story we hear about these days, right? The story doesn't need to be about that, but at the same time, like, yeah, understanding that that's kind of, yeah, the angle she's coming from into her adulthood of just like, yeah, this sort of resentment. I also thought it was like a very honest reflection on it, right? Because I think this is why concepts of pride are important, right? Where it's like pride is not a given, like pride is like a choice and sometimes difficult to make. In this perspective, I'm talking, about cultural pride, but yeah, like I would say, especially among my peers, and like, yeah, having kind of a large Latin American friend community in college, like this was a pretty common discussion for us of like this idea of like tension between, yeah, like having to be the cultural intermediate as a child, but wanting to be proud of the history that you came from. And we don't really get that second half from Sui of like her wanting to be proud. Maybe this is just because that hasn't really made its way into their, cultural, like their community yet. Like she hasn't seen that happen, so she doesn't feel it for herself. And that would make sense for it to be a little further in the past too. But I think these days we're naming that a little bit more, and like at least in our own country, like you see more active efforts to have cultural pride across a diversity of cultures. So
yeah, and we might not get like that pride part exactly, but I think this general theme of accepting oneself, as like cringe as maybe that is to say, it's mentioned a little bit in this, like obviously the queer stuff, but I think the identity stuff too, of like Jay has been made fun of for being Chinese, right? And so like that is something that's impacting him, and so getting this perspective from Sui is important for that story as well, in regards to Jay accepting who he is as a person. I don't know how much depth we'll get to that part of it, but I think it does tie in. It's not like this is random stuff that's being brought up, right?
Totally. No, that's a super good point. I kind of wonder if this will resolve more. I don't know if resolve is the right word, but like if we'll get some more growth on this idea from Sui, or if it really is just meant to frame Jay's story a bit more. Because this farm situation is like a little bit centered around her. If I understood correctly, the farm was granted to her, even though it was her father-in-law's, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think there's something to that, like, both because it represents the relationship she had with her father-in-law, and also because this is, yeah, her origins in a way, right? And so it could have become a burden, but she's kind of taking it on. So I'd be curious to see if we get more feelings from her, and how her relationship with this farm, I guess, grows over time.
Yeah, which is a good time to talk about the farm, I guess, and who's in charge of it right now, which is Fong.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, right now it is kind of a failing farm. We'll see if that changes.
It seems like everyone's farms are failing right now, though, right? It's like drought and like economic toil. There's a few features, but I think it sounds like longstanding drought is the big issue.
I mean, we start this book with the point you brought up. Like, usually Sui isn't the one to make the decisions. And we see with this farm, one of the last chapters we had was Fong and Jack arguing about what to do with the farm. Fong had some plans, some things that might help, but Jack is, like, very much against it. He's complaining without offering any solutions, like an asshole. So I would be curious in regards to, like, Sui's storyline if she takes charge. Like, because she was budgeting on her family farm, right? She was helping them out a lot. So she understands a farm. She understands. So I'd be curious to see if, like, we reach a point where she just starts making more decisions.
Right.
I think Jack is so out of his depth that he really just shouldn't have any say. I mean, it's not his farm anyway, right?
Yeah, it was weird when Jack was being introduced like as a more full character. I was pretty confused about his relationship with the farm, right? Like there seemed to be pretty immediately tension with Fong and Jack. There I was like, "Oh, is this like a long-standing relationship around the farm?" I didn't think so, but maybe. Like I guess in the time that the farm has been Swee's technically, right, but has been theirs, like I guess maybe he's been doing some long distance management, and that's where the bad relationship started, right? But it just he does seem to be, I don't know, approaching it poorly and trying to take control of something he doesn't understand. I think Sui is putting herself in the right position to be the intermediate, to be like the fixer, but like also like maybe the one who should be in charge, since she actually knows how to communicate with both of these people.
Yeah, I think she's certainly trying. Like, I think clearly she's not allowed to talk to Fong and vice versa. Like, I think Jack is causing an issue between their relationship because she tries to have conversations with Fong and like ask how he is and all of this kind of stuff. And Fong doesn't really fully reciprocate that because it's like, that's Jack's wife, you know, that kind of mentality it feels like.
Yeah. She's like showing concern for his health too.
Yeah, so she like has listened this entire time where Jack has been managing this farm, but she just hasn't gotten any like actual say in any of it.
Yeah. So is everyone cohabitating in a house here? Because I know, you know, Jay and Chuan are sharing a room, but like Fong is living in that house with them too then.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I figured. That's just interesting to spend this much time together and kind of have this much distance, you know, socially.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's not even just a feng shui thing. That's like everybody somehow in the same house never spends any time together.
Totally. And I think they name it too, that they like become more distant quite quickly. Like they no longer see the need to spend time together in their current state. It's interesting how like, yeah, once they get ripped out of their normal routines, their normal lives, like maybe some more honest behaviors come out about how they want to spend their time.
Yeah.
I like thought Lena went missing, like because they mentioned at the beginning like she just disappeared, like couldn't find her, and then she doesn't show up for a full third of this book. And when she shows back up, it's normal. So clearly she hasn't gone missing, but I totally thought she did, and no one cared.
That was a weird end to a chapter. I was like, what is happening? Yeah. Like nobody reacted. They were just like, yeah, she disappeared in the forest, and then everything went on as normal.
Normal,
so I was like, I guess
totally
she's
normal.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it basically, yeah, like Jack's just like, oh, just another one of my wayward children. Like, I don't know, I'm just like, you're in a totally new place, but whatever. She was fine, but it's just the way she was totally ignored for a while was weird.
Mm-hmm.
I will say too, just maybe this is like because we don't see much else from Sui interacting with Jack or anything. Like the conversation that they do get in, Sui seems very warm towards Fong, and I couldn't help just being like, is there a thing there? Like, does she I don't know, does she feel warmth towards him beyond just a friend, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was feeling some vibes, but also, as always, I'm a strong defender of a male-female friendship, so
yeah,
I'd be fine with that too. I think they're very similar characters, especially in regards to, maybe not upbringing isn't the right word, but like, they both have worked on farms.
Yeah. Maybe some cultural sharing, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she can understand how difficult this work is. Especially for Fong, who seems to... I mean, he has his workers, but, like, for the most part, he's alone.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he barely has his workers, it sounds like.
Yeah. I think also, maybe tapping into this vibe a little bit is... I don't know about the other kids, but I feel like Jay really respects Fong. And, like... seems to like spending time with him. Like, I think there's one instance where Jay is like, you know, he was kind and like he taught me how like a father should teach a kid. There was something like that, wasn't there? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah, there was just like a paternal energy, I feel like, between Fong and Jay at least, which was like giving off some vibes for that whole family dynamic happening. But I think also Jay is just in need of respectable man in his life.
Honestly.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like Jay does not feel loved in general by most people, I think, right, frankly. So I think he's missing that.
Yeah, and that's Fong from Jay's point of view, right? Which is obviously skewed. Chuan seems to completely hate his father.
You would think it's like the same relationship, right? Between Fong and Chuan and Jay and his father.
Yeah, yeah. Which I can kind of understand. I feel like they both have expectations for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if Fong likes that Chuan wants to leave and like go to the city and like completely disappear.
I think that's the big player here. It's yeah, like a maybe there's at least this is what I'm relating it to, this feeling of like, the kid should kind of carry on the legacy, or like, stay home and make things better type of vibe, whereas Chuan would much rather just go to the city and be able to live his fun and probably safer life for him.
Yeah, Chuan was definitely making me think of like the relationship we see between Sui and her father, of like her not wanting to work the farm was seen as laziness, and like she eventually had to choose between them or herself and leave them and that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming there's similar tensions going on, which could make for a very interesting relationship between Chuan and Sui if they ever have like a conversation.
Yeah, like heart to heart on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's maybe a good opportunity, because I want that kind of further perspective from Sui on the fact that she's on a farm again. But yeah, like Chuan could end up kind of repeating like the cycle of going out into the world and living a full life, and then if you so choose, deciding to return to this kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
I guess on the other hand, Chuan is not like disconnected, right? He's still giving a couple days of work a week to the farm.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's interesting how this sort of behavior can be seen as like a lack of discipline, right? Like where Fong is like, oh, he's kind of misbehaving. He goes off to the city. He doesn't tell me where he is. He's gone for a couple of days, even though he does like come back and do his job, right? He comes and helps out. He does his part, and then he kind of takes his own time for the rest of the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I think Fong thinks that he should have like 7 days a week oversight on Chuan's life. But he's 19, like he is becoming an adult, and like really what he's doing is discipline, because he's seeking independence, right? He's making money, he's saving money so that way he can like afford an apartment. Like he's gaining independence and becoming an adult. Like I would say this, and I get it, he's going out too, he's drinking and stuff, whatever, but he deserves to have a good time as well. But like that's not I think the family culture. Like I think it's like discipline means like you are working as much as possible, and then like when you're not working, you're here like with the family, maybe even if that means you're doing nothing.
Yeah, it's a really thin line between, I don't even know if it's a thin line, but like having a child like give back to the family in like situations like these, like doing work that helps the family, but then also exploiting your children for labor.
Yeah, honestly.
It's like a thin line that's a little bit maybe too cultural for this white girl to speak on, to be honest.
Yeah, it is a bit of like it can be a bit of a trap though, right? Of it makes sense for him to contribute, and like it kind of gives him meaningful work to do if he were to so choose. It's just not being given to him as a choice here, right?
Right.
I think it's easy to explain how it makes sense for Chuan to be a farm worker and like follow in his dad's footsteps. It's just such a narrow path, right? It's like, oh, this is I think from Fong's perspective, like it's like, why wouldn't you do this? This makes the most sense, and like this is the life I've set up for you. So I can understand why he feels like that's the right way. But then for Chuan, it's like, no, this is a limiter. Like I have other things. I have a life. I want to choose how it goes. And like while this is an option, I don't choose it.
Yeah, and then sadly the result of that is, I mean, eventually Fong is going to reach a point where he can't work anymore, and so it's like, how does that labor eventually get done?
Yeah.
It won't.
Yeah.
So like,
it won't. Yeah.
And if it won't, then what happens to him?
Yeah.
But then that's also like not that isn't a pressure that should be on your child.
Totally not. I mean, yeah, I feel strongly about not burdening your children with your with your own life, right?
Yeah, we've talked about this a few times recently.
Yeah. I think in this case too, like oh man, who is it that they were talking about? I can't now remember if it was Jack or Fong, where they're like, oh, like he's getting to retirement age, I don't know why he's still working. But I think that was Fong. Do you remember?
I feel like that was Jack.
Oh fuck. All right. Because I'm like wondering what is the setup here? Like, does Jack, or not Jack, does Fong need to continue working, or like does he have retirement savings? Like, I don't know what their financial situation is for the long run. Like, is he kind of screwed if he's physically unable to work anymore? Like, is he going to become Chuan's dependent?
Yeah, I feel like savings is not happening.
Yeah, that's
in this
my guess
scenario.
too. Like, yeah.
I don't even know if he's making enough money to save it.
That's the thing, right? Because we're, part of this, the culture, or sorry, not the culture, the part of the world context in this is economic toil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like how, especially where they are, they're concerned about, even ATMs having cash. Like, there's just like a bit of insecurity right now. I can't imagine a lot of savings happening. And two, like with many years of drought, I can't imagine a lot of saving is happening. So I think that's probably pretty scary for Fong.
And then, he has no family to draw back on, really.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because of his whole relationship with Jack. Like, technically, that should be your family to fall back on, but...
Yeah, it's funny because I was confused about, like, some of the money comments that were made in that, like, Fong and Jack chapter. And I, like, briefly thought, like, as part of the money thing was a feeling of guilt from Jack of, like, knowing that he got the better ends and, like, that he actually has money to do things with. But then, like, like, I don't know if there was, like, a pressure of, like, well, because I have money, I'm, like, supposed to give it to Fong, or I don't know, feeling that Fong was, in a way, like, a financial burden. Like, I couldn't tell if it was the feeling of burden or, like, responsibility, if that distinction makes sense. Like, feeling like he has to do it versus feeling like, I guess he has to do it and he doesn't have a choice, versus feeling like he has to do it but wants to do it.
Yeah, I guess the question is, like, how did Fong end up in this position, right? Did he start working on this farm because his father wanted him to work on this farm? And Jack is just carrying on that situation? Because if that's the case, it might feel like I have to keep this up because it's like a family thing I have to keep up.
Right.
And that might be where there's resentment.
It's also interesting that the father gave the farm to Sui and not Fong.
Yeah, I was going to say, because then it's like, if you wanted Fong to have something, why would you not just give the farm to him completely?
There's definitely at least enough acknowledgement of Fong to be there working on the farm. Like, he's obviously not fully ostracized from the rest of the family.
Yeah. Yeah, so I could see it being done, maybe not through the father. Maybe Jack really was just, like, trying to help his half-brother out because he feels responsible, but, like, obviously not doing it out of love.
Yeah.
Right? I think there is some bitterness there.
And yeah, it's certainly not enough for him to be like, I'll financially support you directly, right? Which maybe would be difficult to do, but I don't know. I think the class difference is hard to tell here. Like, there's some discussion of like, oh, they're from the capital, like they're city people, they grew up, with more resources than we did out here on the farm, right? But it's hard to say how much of that is like a bias or stereotype versus the reality of their lives. I don't know if we really get a good insight into like sort of the financial state. I assume at least financial stability, but I just don't know what that looks like for the family, especially too given they have 3 kids. But also he does have the job of a teacher, but then also Sui complains that he's making a teacher salary, so it's unclear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's also a mention of Jack was supposed to get a promotion or a raise, and then he didn't, and that might have happened multiple times. So yeah, I think it's like middle class, which is like still comfortable, but like you're not exactly, it's not like, I don't know if Jack could retire, to be honest.
Yeah, I would at least think, I don't really know how things work in Malaysia, but at least if he's at a college/university job, I would hope that there's some sort of, retirement plan in order, but I don't know.
But also he might just like to work. He might be one of those people that wants to get out of the house at any means necessary,
I could see that. I could see him being a work till you die kind of person, just because of his, I don't know, his like kind of traditional nature.
Yeah, but we've drifted a little bit, I guess. I mean, it is important to talk about the Jack Fong relationship, I guess, which was kind of thrown out of nowhere, to be honest.
Honestly, yeah. It's funny, we've spent so much time talking about Sui, Fong, and Jack, and I feel like the main characters of this story are supposed to be Jay and Chuan.
I know. Chuan, we mentioned a little bit. I don't know if we have anything else to say about him, to be honest.
I just thought it was interesting that they're, setting his social scene for us. Like he's primarily friends with women, and especially this one girl, Jessie, right? Like that's his bud. and we see a moment where like some boys come through the market that they're at and kind of give him a hard time. So we get kind of a overlap between that and some of the things Jay has experienced. And so that just kind of gave me the question of whether or not we think he's like openly gay / queer of some variety within his peer group, or if it's really just like the same vibe with Jay where he's not out per se, but people have identified him as different.
Yeah, I feel like the latter is probably more likely.
Yeah.
Probably him just being friends with women is enough to have him be marked by society, to be honest.
Honestly. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he is friends with women, it's giving some degree of he didn't fit in with the boys, right? Not that it had to default that way, but I think that's probably what that's saying.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to understand and using the social context to understand is what Chuan feels about himself, right? Like, does he understand that he is queer in some way? Does he, does he have acceptance of self, or I don't know, just like where along his own story is he?
Right. Yeah, and that's really important from like a perspective point too, because like this is all from Jay's perspective. So like when I'm reading it, I feel like Chuan is pretty self-assured.
Right.
He kind of knows what he wants, and so like himself as an individual seems pretty confident as well.
Totally.
That's all from Jay.
Yeah,
right?
who's like looking up to him effectively.
Yeah. So are we a bit rose-colored here in regards to Chuan's character?
Yeah, I'm hoping that means we're gonna get more insight in the second half, and like I think their relationship is starting to become a bit more direct, and so maybe we'll get some more personal thoughts and feelings from Chuan as a result. But yeah, right now it's been very like observational, whereas like Jay, we get the inner thinkings and we get the stories of school and things like that.
Yeah. I think the first chapter had me worried, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, totally.
But I do think emotionally these two boys are bonding in like a meaningful way. So yeah, I do feel pretty confident along with you that maybe we'll have some actual dialogue about feelings, as crazy as that sounds.
I know, yeah. I will say too, like with that opening, like and a bit of the early parts of the story, Chuan was giving villain vibes. And I was like not feeling good about it for a little bit. I think now I see that, they are developing that friendship, at least to start, where they're starting to understand each other, and Chuan seems to like, I don't know. I think Chuan didn't think much of anything of Jay at first, frankly. But now seeing him to start like seeing who Jay is, like I think he finds him to be a bit amusing in some of the things he says, and he's seeing that he's a smart kid, even if that doesn't show in his grades, right? And he's starting to show some care for him too, of being like a bit protective of him with the parents, like not telling them that he's not doing all the same work that he's doing, and then also like he bought him a shirt, got some food for him and stuff like that. So like it's the development is happening, and like the personal connection is starting to occur more.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note we see it maybe in the last chapter before we finished up here, but like yeah, there is that note of care of like Chuan's like, we have to look out for you, and Jay's like, I can look out for myself, and Chuan doesn't negate that statement. He's like, yeah, but you should be looked after, kind of something like that, yeah. Right? It's not saying like Jay is weak, which I think could have been a problem if like Jay is seen as feminine or weak or unable to stand up for himself, that kind of tropey nonsense. But I do think Jay is soft.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And I mean that as a compliment, right? He's emotional.
We see it with this school scenes, right? Where he's kind of, he's empathetic and friendly, right?
Yeah. So I do think Chuan is great. Like, people like that do have to be cared for. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's Chuan understanding the world and also Jay's place in it. So yeah, I think there's a deeper understanding between the two of them.
So I'm excited to see it develop. I was skeptical at first, but I think it could go well.
Yeah. And I guess we should talk about the elephant in the room, which is our main character. We've obviously talked about him a bit.
He's a sweet boy.
He is a sweet boy. It's very clear this is his coming of age story. I think we're getting a little bit transcendentalist, maybe. I definitely want to talk about this in the second part, kind of nature and queerness and society and all of those things I would write a paper about in college. But to keep it brief, I think nature here and like the farm and like tending to the farm is just being used as a way to like give him peace and let him become comfortable with himself and with his body, and like the parallel between, I guess, him and the farm. His family, I guess, and the farm is kind of what's happening here.
Totally. I think, the farm is meant to be symbolic for sure.
And clearly, like, Jay is not a person that fits within this society necessarily, but he does fit within pieces of it, right? Like these natural parts of it.
Yeah, I would almost say too, like, I was a big fan of the story of him, like, it's like when those boys kind of kick the ball off into the side, right? They're like, oh, go in after, and he's like, all right, because like no one else will, right? I think there was maybe a subtle point. I don't know if it was subtle, but a point being made of like, basically like of diversity being a benefit, right? Like someone like Jay, who doesn't have the same sort of social restrictions that some other folks have, was able to just like go in there and see if he could find it. And I don't know that he ever did, but like just the fact that he was able to, like, shows that he fills a niche in society that other people never will, right? And so I think there's a point to be made there of maybe like the society or community aspect and benefit of having a diversity of people. And in this case, that includes someone like Jay, who, yeah, maybe he's queer, but most importantly, he's soft, right? Like, he's soft and he's thoughtful and he's not afraid of nature.
Yeah, he's really willing to go somewhere other people aren't, willing to tap into emotions other boys might not be willing to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of parallels for sure can be made.
Yeah. Oh, and also the way he like positively responds to what I think is other queer folks in his school. Like when they talk about like the wave and the kiss blowing, and he's kind of just like waving and smiling or whatever. Like he's just like, I don't know, he's responding with positivity. He's not affected the same way that other folks would be by that stuff.
Yeah, I will say it is kind of refreshing. Obviously, there's some anxiety about his queerness, but for the most part, Jay understands that he's queer, right?
Yeah,
and like,
yeah.
he's not. There's not really much internalized homophobia, I feel like.
He's mostly just afraid of others, right? He's afraid of being found out. He knows who he is, but he's afraid of, what that means for his life, which I think is kind of normal,
Completely fair, especially in this environment, right?
Totally. But like, I think it is important that this story of him and Chuan is like, this is not his first crush, right? And we get like a little story. I forget the character's name now, but like a story of one of his, who used to be one of his close friends, and like kind of maybe wanting to explore that, But like he's had a crush on someone before, so that's, I think that's often a coming of age component for a queer story, right? Is like, oh my gosh, like my first crush on someone of the same sex or something like that, But in this case, it's not that. It's like, no, like I know this is the case, but I've never been given the opportunity in a relatively safe environment to actually explore that with someone else.
Yeah, I think the the crush with, I think it was Nizam was the character's name.
I'll take your word for it. I don't remember.
Yeah, they were getting close in like the little secluded nature place at school. I think Nizam was coming on to Jay, and then they got interrupted. And then it seemed like afterwards, Nizam became part of the crowd that made fun of Jay. I think that's what happened, right?
Yeah. Self-defense mechanisms, I see.
Yeah. So I think that shows an interesting, path that could have happened of like, maybe you aren't completely comfortable with what happened. You tried something, you got freaked out, so you completely heel turn and go the other direction.
Totally, yeah.
Which, happens when society is the way it is. But I think the fact that this happened to Jay, and he does face some of that hate, especially from somebody who seemed interested in him, and it doesn't cause him to become like bitter or also take a heel turn. He kind of just like remains who he is, really, I think is really refreshing, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Totally. Have you ever read or watched Heartstopper?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen some of it.
Yeah, we have been watching it. We're way behind, of course. This has been out for years, but
yeah.
We just started watching it this week, and there's been a lot of overlap between that and this as a result, right? Especially the school settings of, you get the characters who are confident, you get the characters who are closeted, and you get the characters who kind of hate themselves and like kind of behave that way as a result, where they like they're defending themselves, they're like trying to be included with the main crowd. And so they're willing to sacrifice other things for it, in this case, a friendship, to make sure that they are kind of themselves safe. And I'll even say, too, like, I feel like I personally engaged in some of that in middle school, or like, there was all sorts of bullying left and right happening in middle school, frankly. Like, Certainly I received it, but like I also did it too. Like I think everyone was really not everyone was an equal opportunity target, but certainly wasn't going in lots of directions. And I certainly had moments in middle school where I was like, well, someone else is being picked on right now. Like now's my moment to be in the in group, right, and like protect myself and try to prevent this from happening to me again in the future by like targeting this other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is how humans respond to social things, and you kind of have to mature up to get past that.
Yeah, mature up and like find the right groups where you can be yourself and you can find that peace.
Like friends you actually want to have and not just like being in the big in-group crowd.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess with all the characters talked about, for the most part, there are some theories we could ponder. I don't know if I have anything concrete as always.
This one's a little tougher to be concrete on because there's not a lot of like plot points to predict on.
Yeah. But I guess like the most important maybe plot theory really is like, will the farm survive? Possibly what will happen to it? Which we've talked a little bit about. I'm not completely against the idea of Sui getting more involved. I don't know if that'll save it though, like I mentioned before.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll really know for sure the long-term fate of the farm. My temptation is to believe that it will at least go on. It'll continue to coast on, but maybe with some more active care. And I think especially if this is supposed to be a bit of a symbol for the family, like I think, I would hope at least that by the end of the story, we're seeing them look a little bit more inwardly and grow. And so I think that's probably all we can ask for the farm, is that there will be an attempt to improve it, but maybe not a guarantee that it will succeed.
Yeah, because definitely what we're seeing right now is there's just too many things outside of your control, both because of other societies, i.e. America, ruining everybody's life, and because of nature, right? Like, we try and tame it, but especially when it's getting fucked with, it is very hard to actually get nature to do what you want it to do.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, they can care about the farm as much as they want. Doesn't really mean anything, sadly.
Yeah, they can't stop droughts from droughting, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess slightly tied into the farm issue, though, is, do we think Sui and Jack are gonna get divorced? Maybe Sui will end up just staying on the farm.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I think a component of this is, do they go back, right? Because there was a discussion at the beginning of like, maybe they never come back from the farm, right? Maybe this is a one-way trip. I could certainly see a situation where Sui stays and Jack goes, and like continues his teaching job. I think they wouldn't divorce though. I think maybe he'd come back every summer until he retires, and then maybe he comes back permanently. I think they're committed to this marriage, even if it's not super loving. I mean, they've stuck it out this long. I think it's not been loving for a long time if the kids have been feeling this way for this long. I think there's maybe just the decision that this marriage serves a function and it's worth it for that.
Interesting. Okay. I can definitely see that from Jack's point of view. I feel like if there are actually vibes between Fong and Sui, I could see something happening just because Fong mentions his mom and dad's relationship, which obviously she was a mistress, but like they seem to be in love, right? So I think this idea of being in love with somebody is maybe something that'll come back around.
What if, like, if my prediction is right and like Jack is gone for 9 months a year, what if like Fong and Sui are like, they have their 9 months a year where they're together, and then when Jack comes around, they're not together?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was thinking about that possibility too. I think it would be very funny because it would kind of mimic their dad's situation.
Exactly, yeah.
But it would just be Sui who kind of has like, I mean, she would be a slut in that case because of, misogyny.
Right.
But
right.
it's entirely
from
possible.
My perspective as a reader, I think it could be powerful.
Yeah.
Not that I want to support cheating, but I'm like, it would make a lot of sense,
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see that outcome. And there, given how much emphasis there was on Fong's position on that, and like, understanding the term mistress and all that, there was kind of a deep dive into that. I could see it setting something like that up.
Mm-hmm. I also think like, yeah, these characters all have kids, but Sui isn't that old, right? Like, I am always of the opinion it's never too late to restart your life, so...
Yeah, that's definitely the messy route, though, right? Like, if she and Fong formally end up together, I mean, no, both of them are messy, I want to be clear, but, like, this is the visibly messy route, right? Where they have to, like, negotiate what their lives are going to look like and their relationship to Jack. Though it is Sui's farm, right? So I guess she can do what she wants with it. But
Yeah, I mean, all of her children are basically grown,
Right.
so I don't know. I think they should separate, but that's mostly because I hate Jack. So what can I say?
I mean, they should, right? Like in that, like if they care about their own pursuit of happiness, they should absolutely. I just don't know. Like the reason I say functional because it's worked this long and it's difficult to change your life, like it's not without effort, and they may just think we can coast, and maybe they'll hope things get better when they're not actively raising the kids anymore, which is maybe faulty thinking. But I just think there's so many traditional reasons that people would stay in a marriage like that's just more likely.
Yeah, for sure. I just feel like eventually we've already it's just that we've already seen hints of like Sui having to take care of Jack's mother and like the work she has to put in for like his family and stuff. And so the future for her is continuing to do that and then also eventually taking care of him.
Yeah,
right?
that's
So
true.
it's like
That's true.
there is no happy ending for her staying together with him.
Yeah, that's also a good point. That's kind of depressing. I think a fun point that was made by Lena earlier in the book, she's like, men and women aren't meant to live together, which was giving. I think Lena's queer too, but that could be another conversation. But I thought that maybe was like a push for them separating to stay single, like to just live their own lives. It's hard for me to see that as the likely outcome, but I feel like I had to bring it up of like maybe that is a foreshadowing of like maybe they should get divorced, maybe they will get divorced and just kind of like learn to live separate lives in ways that are beneficial for each of them, maybe at least for Sui.
I mean, yeah, I could see that. I think also wrapped up in this is, would Jack be willing to stay if he finds out Jay is gay, right? Like, what does that do for their relationship?
I'd be curious what that does for the larger family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I think Jay has a year of school left, right?
I think so, yeah.
It sounds like they're going to go back then. I mean, they should go back and let him finish school, but I mean, it's up, he was failing anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. If they just stay on the farm, he might just stay on the farm.
Right.
But, I mean, yeah, to fully get into it, Jay and Chuan's relationship, which we didn't mention, but they are technically cousins.
Oh, God, yeah.
Which is interesting.
They don't know that, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, does it make it better because they can't have children? I guess, like, scientifically.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
But
that's a whole conversation,
morally...
right? Yeah, morally, yeah. I don't know. I just think, yeah. Oh, you're right. Obviously, like, for scientific reasons, we're not concerned about procreation in this case. But yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Also, it's not like they grew up together, so they don't have, like, the sort of brotherly relationship cousins might have if they really grew up together. It still gives me the ick. I can't shake that.
For sure. But I think we're both of the opinion that this relationship isn't going to last anyway.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think that's what it's for, right? Like, I don't think this is meant to be like I found the love of my life story. I do think it's meant to be a growth story. There's also a lot of references to like, and in the future, Jay will experience this thing many times, right? Which none of them I think specifically count out them staying together, but I just think the implication is that this is the start of Jay's life, right? And that he will have many an experience, and so I don't think to me that just like implies that they won't be together in the long run.
Yeah, I was also getting like learning experience vibes, and like obviously they're becoming comfortable with who they are, and they're doing that by supporting each other. But yeah, it's not like a forever love.
Yeah.
But regardless, there's still the possibility that they will be found, especially if they're just having sexual encounters in the woods.
I know.
So, do we think they will be found out?
I hope not, for sure. I kind of think no, because unless the story really becomes about that, like the family's reaction, like I think there's just so much to flesh out if that were to occur, and there's only 140 pages left in this book. I think that's not the direction it's going to go in.
Yeah, because we have to be honest, like Malaysia is very different than America.
And this is the late 90s too. Like, a lot has changed in the past, 2.5 decades.
Yeah. So very different if they do get found out.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I don't really know if this is what the book is for.
No, yeah. I think it would. I would be shocked if it goes that direction.
Yeah, I could maybe see like Lena, maybe.
I think that would be fine. I think that would be a unique situation, right? Yeah, I think it would just be Lena, and she's the cool sister. Like, I think she'd be with it. And when I think about, like, she to me is the symbol of what I was saying earlier of like ushering the family into the modern era. Because she's like actively doing it, right? Like, she's being quite rebellious. She's like trying to make her parents believe she has a tattoo. She's shaving her head. She's listening to modern music, kind of just doing her own thing. Like, she's living the change. So I think it would almost make sense for her to know and maybe even feel positively about it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think anything else is maybe too complicated here.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I noticed from the first chapter was this mention of them seeing a bird, I think watching them at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a discussion of whether or not that was a good omen or a bad omen. I just wanted to bring that up and see if it connected to any of our theories. I feel like anytime a bird is brought up, it's generally a bad omen, but it's usually more than just the existence of a bird, right? So maybe it's not, but my temptation is to believe that that's not a good outlook. And since it's only happening with Jay and Chuan around, I think it's just meant to be maybe a sign that, again, that this relationship is not going to last forever. Hopefully it doesn't mean like too harsh of a fallout, but I do think it means like this is temporary.
Yeah, I mean, you brought this up, and that's where I was wondering, like, if they're going to be found out, because it feels like they're being watched. Like, eventually somebody is going to see them, and something is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
This could also just be like, even in nature, you're never actually in nature anymore, right? Like, it's all maintained by civilization, right? So like, even out here where they can seemingly be themselves, there's still the pressure of society, right? That is like looming over them.
That's interesting.
That could also just be it.
It's an interesting perspective, because it's like using nature as the proxy for society, right? Where it's like, yeah, I think we often see them as like complements to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's interesting. Especially the concept, yeah, the idea of that the bird is watching, right? Like that there is a looming nature to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a bit unsettling now. I'm just gonna hope it's only a doom for their relationship, and not that it's gonna be something too crazy.
Yeah. I think ultimately they won't be found out in like a terrible way, at least. But I do think between like the pressures of their family, the pressures of this kind of relationship, it's just like, yeah, to your point, the relationship is kind of doomed because of all these things. And just, I mean, also they're also like cousins, and they're young, and there's just a lot of things happening that make this relationship doomed.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean like, yeah, doomed in a tragic way necessarily. I think they'll leave on good terms.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, I think that's everything for the most part. And as always, if you have your own thoughts or theories about the South, all of our socials are in the description.
And please follow, 5-star our podcast wherever you listen to it. And thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.